Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Resume Preparation for Data Science and Analytics. My name is Stephanie McIntyre, Associate Director of Career Education. Sponsored by University Career Services, this workshop seeks to prepare you to optimize your resume to fit companies' data management, data analytics, and reporting needs and expectations. During this workshop, we will cover the following: an understanding of what companies need, resume writing best practices. You will be encouraged to take inventory of your own data science related skills and experiences so that you can communicate measurable outcomes and be a value add to employers of your choice. I will take time to outline some UCS support services as well as resources. This will include resources and supports in your efforts to individualize your resume writing process, as well as you will be directed to resources that will help you understand employer and industry trends as it relates to data science and analytics. We will end by uncovering some of our upcoming career fair dates and other prep workshop event offerings. And I'll open it up at the end for Q&A. As I go through the following content, as questions and comments come to mind, please feel free to even put it in the chat right now. This will allow you to remember your questions, and we'll have a running tally of those questions so that at the end of the presentation, we can go back and read through that text and I can start with those questions. And then if you don't mind taking yourselves off of mute at that time, and then put yourself on camera if you would like as well, so that we can answer any further questions that you may have. Let's begin with the end in mind. And in order for you to put your best foot forward in communicating your brand, what skill sets you have to offer that are going to be of value to employers who are looking for data science and analytics functions being played out through the roles that they're offering, it is very important for you to understand the trends in the industry and how to shape your brand to align with those things. A few things for you to think about based on your academic background and the experiences you're having both inside and outside the classroom. If anyone can put yourself on mute, that would also be helpful. Truly think about your professional brand. As you think about yourself as a data scientist, what's some of your focal areas and skills? Does it have to do with database management, domain management, statistical analysis and reporting, data visualization, or a combination of? Think about how employers talk about these needs, how the experiences and skill sets that you're learning in the classroom also align with these company and organization needs. It's going to be a first step to think about how you'll communicate that well on your resume. If these functional areas of your interest and what you're preparing for, you're in good company. This is definitely a growth area within the work world. 2020 data shows from Data Science Society that there was a 28% increase in demand for data science professionals in 2020. And 92% of companies are indeed investing in big data. Therefore, think about the value add that you truly offer these organizations, because the need for your skill sets are truly there. Let's talk about a little bit of resume writing basics. And in a few slides ahead, I'll actually go through and walk through a sample resume document to you so that you can conceptualize your own content and categories in order of in which you speak about your experience so that you can make this very tangible for you in your own resume writing process. So let's start with first the anatomy of the resume. And if you have a document or another screen up with your own resume, that may also be helpful for you to think in real time about your resume as it exists at present. As far as the anatomy of a resume is concerned, think about the order of your content, your contact information, possibly a summary of your professional brand, your education, your experience section or sections, possibly varied projects inside or outside of the class, freelance work, coding projects and examples that you may have. All of this content in sections and categories are up for grabs as you think about what you should put on your resume. Your skill sets, specifically hard skills, such as platforms and software programs that you are experts in, that you know are of value to any employer to carry out the functions that they will require of you. Some other best practices to think about as you embark on any resume document are a few things. Think about your font style, your font size, and your margins. As we think about some of those best practices and the basics of resume writing, first things first, your font style, Times New Roman, or another font style that is similar. Unless an individual is going into a heavily design-oriented field, a creative or fine arts field, you do not want to use your resume as an opportunity to demonstrate your creative abilities. Depending on your industry and or job function, you want this to be a business style document. If that is the case for you, based on the function that you're going to play and the industries that you may be representing, you would want to stick with a basic font style such as Times New Roman. You want to then make sure that that font style, as well as the font size, is uniform throughout your document. 10.5 or 11-point font seems to be a standard or a consistent, appropriate size for your font, regardless of whether a hiring manager is going to be sourcing your resume on their laptop screen, another device, or if it's being printed out. The exception to that uniformity in your font size may be with your name stylistically being slightly larger than everything else on your document, such as if your resume is going to be Times New Roman 11-point font, you may consider having your name at 14 or 16 max, possibly bolded just to stand out from the rest of your content. There are other stylistic decisions and options that a resume writer can make. And what I'm highlighting right now are just some best practices and some standards within the field. Other things for you to think about are your margins. 1 inch margins, top, bottom, left, and right is typically the standard. But if you're looking to add a little bit more width and length of the page in which you're using, you can make a decision to go into your settings and change those margins from 1 inch to 1/2 inch to 0.5. You still want it to be uniform though, so you want to make sure that when you make that change, you do so on all sides, top, bottom, left, and right. Depending on the amount of experience or the years of working you may bring to the table, may also determine whether or not your resume will be 1 page or a 2-pager. A 2-page would be max for most industries, even up to 10 years of experience.
Stephanie,
yes.
Can I interrupt you? It seems that if you had slides that were supposed to be moving along, they're not moving.
Okay, are you seeing getting back to basics?
That's the only thing we see. But
Yes, so Mariana, I'll be getting to the examples later. Thank you.
Yeah, you had.
I'm sorry, Mariana?
No, you just had the question on the chat because.
I didn't see that,
that
question in the chat. I'll reserve the chat questions until the end. But what I will do, I mentioned that I will be in a few slides over actually going through a sample resume. What I'm asking individuals right now is if you have your document in front of you or on another screen, you can follow along just to see if any of your content aligns with or is different from some of the best practices that I am outlining right now. So as I was mentioning before, 1 page or 2 pages may be determined by the level of experience you have. And so that's one of the things that I would encourage you to maybe sit down with an advisor or definitely University Career Services, a member of my career coaching staff, to identify what's going to be most appropriate for your audience. And as we move forward in a few other slides, we're going to start to narrow down the type of content, industry specific and functional language that you can use to really make sure that you're highlighting for your reader, which is a hiring manager for either an internship or a job, the scope and or impact that you have made based on the experiences you've had both in projects or previous work. Some things to consider in these best practices is that for most positions within related fields based on your data analytics functions of choice, most job postings will have about 250 applicants per position. Even more so, why the next few slides are going to be so crucial to you thinking about the most pointed and strategic ways for you to communicate the details in a very concise way around your experiences that are aligned with what that position and that company values. And at least within that first round review, hiring managers typically review a resume for around 6 seconds, which is why also the order and the structure of your resume is important to make sure that a reader is encouraged to either read on in your resume instead of move on to another applicant. These are also some things to think about as we look at the resume example in a few minutes, is the difference between hard and soft skills. Is there anyone that would like to take themselves off of mute to maybe share how they differentiate for themselves and define what hard skills are for your line of work and then soft skills in general? Anyone at all?
I think I can go.
Okay, yes.
Okay. Yeah, let me turn on my video. So, hello everyone, my name is Lakshita, and so I think soft skills would be something like the skills that cannot be displayed in terms of, say, our software. So it's like leadership, communication, presentation, all of these things are soft skills that you learn along the way. Hard skills are, okay, I can use Python, I can do economic analysis, I am a good programmer and things like that. So that's how I understand these two.
Absolutely. Lakshita, you are absolutely on target. Your hard skills are functions that you're learning in your major courses. Hard skills are the skill sets that you're also, that are highlighted in the job description related to the tasks that you would be carrying out related to the role. So that is absolutely the case. And soft skills are those transferable characteristics, the skill sets and strengths that you didn't pick up from any one place, but that are essential to work in any type of business and any type of workplace setting. So thank you. Is there anyone who has maybe something else to add to that that's very much on target, but any other thoughts around hard skills and soft skills? If not, let's make sure that as we move forward, we think about the place of having both of those on your resume, because your resume is an appropriate opportunity for you to highlight and justify how you have developed both of those things. So as you see on the bottom of the screen, these are examples of software, some platforms that are visualization or coding platforms that you already are familiar with. Think about how you want to use that language specifically, very consciously, as you talk about your projects to highlight for a company or an organization how you've been able to engage at an expert level with any of the software below, that highlights how you've had successes in carrying out a project or a task at hand. In addition to those hard skills or soft skills, you'll find that balance of how you're going to speak about them under your accomplishment statements on your resume by identifying the different needs of the organization or organizations that you're looking to market yourself to. Startups, small businesses, larger corporations, organizations that represent different industries are going to have very differing missions, visions, and values. So in addition to your functional role, whether that may be strictly coding, data management, database management, analysis, reporting, whatever your role may be or a combination of, maybe a reflection of that type of organization that you're working for. Sometimes in small businesses and startups where the mantra is do more with less, may mean that you're taking on multiple roles within the organization, even within one position. All the more so while striking a balance between those functional skills, as well as things like leadership, teamwork, analytical, critical thinking skills are equally important to your functional skill sets and strengths. Also, it's very important for us to not use industry and job function interchangeably, or at least be conscious of the times where we do use it interchangeably and the times when it's very important for you to think about not only the job function that you do, which is the work that you do, versus the industry in which you're carrying out that context. So you could work for a university, so you're working for education or academia, which is the industry, but your job function is data analytics, where you're a data scientist. You can be working for a small business, but the organization's mission you will have to get in line with, or understand that there may be other functional or skill sets that you need to bring to the table, although they'll be hiring you on maybe for a very pointed or focused function, such as for data visualization through the use of Tableau, as an example. So let's take a look at this resume sample. I want to take a moment to deconstruct how this example outlines some important content that you may want to reflect on and question where there's appropriateness between the example used and the content and experience you're bringing forth on your resume. And while I've already outlined some best practices in resume writing, there's not a lot of hard and fast rules, meaning resume writing isn't a science. There's not a lot of completely rights or completely wrongs to resumes. And so that's why I would love for you to really think through how your experience lines up with this example. We'll have time for that conversation during our Q&A if there are examples of work that you've experienced or projects that you're experiencing that you may want to think of another way to present that information on your document. And then the emphasis will be on you scheduling a one-on-one appointment as well to think about how we can personalize your presentation of your own experience. Let's start at the top with the red arrow that is focusing on the contact information. Very straightforward with your name and your contact information. Many individuals are still putting a mailing address on their resume, and that is absolutely okay and appropriate. While most hiring managers, HR departments as a whole have gotten away from mailings going to individuals' homes, I still think it's very appropriate to share that information on a resume. It is a personal choice because truly, as long as you have an accurate email address and a phone number for follow-up, you'll be able to still get the same job done, even if you're not sharing your actual home address or a mailing address on your resume. Make sure that as you construct your content for your contact information on your resume, that you're never giving duplicative information. So for example, if you are an undergraduate and you live on campus, or if you have, during the school year or academic year address and then home, quote unquote, is somewhere else, no need to put both addresses on your resume. You never want to give an employer an opportunity to question, which one should I send it to? Or multiple email addresses or phone numbers. I would say stick to one address type for each. Additionally, many of you may have a GitHub profile, LinkedIn profiles. This is also a wonderful opportunity for you to highlight freelance work, sample coding projects, and other skill sets that you may not necessarily be able to show in a very visual way on your 1 to 2 page resume. So that is absolutely appropriate to include any additional social media or profiles that you may have that highlight more about your experience and skill sets in a way that will be appropriate for your industry and or job function. Let's move on to education with the Carolina blue arrow. Under your education section, you want to think of a few things with detail. The name of your university as well as its location. It's very, very easy for us at our institution because our location is in our title. So you would simply put the name of our institution, and you can think of where you would want to tie your degree completion date. With this sample, you'll see it on the right of the margin, the month and year of graduation. No need to put expected or projected. When an individual reading a resume see the month or year, if it is a future date, that hiring manager will know that that means that you are currently matriculating. But it's very important for you to highlight that detail of both month and year, because for their own sourcing of talent and thinking about recruitment, always very important for them to know not only what year you're graduating, but what month. How a hiring manager approaches an applicant who's graduating in May is going to be very different from how they approach a conversation with an applicant who is graduating in December, for example. Under the name of your institution, and yes, I see Madison has a question. Please chime in, Madison.
Is it fine to do spring, summer, and fall?
Possibly. I think that hiring managers also recognize what that means, but what I would say is be as specific as possible. Also thinking about within the corporate world outside of academia, not everyone always has a context for graduation dates to know that May or that spring typically means May, that winter graduation typically means December. So recognizing that individuals within other industries has a different context or maybe not the same frame of reference as we do thinking from semester to semester. And that's why we encourage individuals to think in terms of months and years, because it's much more specific. Was that helpful, Madison?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Kay, I see your hand up. Yes.
If we're like college students, should we even include when we graduate high school anymore?
No, no. So as a college student, unless you're still in your first year and you're really marketing something very specific about yourself that really just happened a year ago, really consider, if with that as the exception, truly think of yourself as a pre-professional. And this resume is highlighted in marketing your advanced education at the undergraduate level and moving forward into professional life. So if you still have your high school information under your education section, you can eliminate that.
Okay,
Great
thank
question.
you.
Yes. So your university information, your specific degree, spelling that out. You don't have to put BA or BS. I would really, again, this is where you become very intentional and specific for your audience so that there's never any assumptions. Bachelor of Science in whatever that may be, comma, the name of your minor. If you are a double major, please note that the institution will only be conferring you one degree, and that's going to be your primary major. So you don't want to have misleading information that would make an employer, again, assume that this individual, this applicant, based on their resume, may have 2 bachelor's degrees. So if it's the case that you have a computer science degree and an English major, you would want to put Bachelor of Science in Computer Science, comma, English, instead of Bachelor of Science in, Bachelor of Arts in, having both of those there, because that may be slightly misleading to your audience. If you want to highlight GPA, that's also optional, but very much encouraged if you have a competitive GPA or anything over a 3.0. So this example right here outlines both a cum GPA as well as a major GPA. However you want to outline that or present that on your resume is completely up to you. This example highlights some coursework. I think that's appropriate if it's something that's very specific and pointed to the job function that you're applying for. This also gives you another opportunity to use that functional language of your field. So if within the job description, it outlines that they're looking for individuals that understands data structure, computer organization, fluency in a specific coding method or platform, then this may be an opportunity for you to list coursework that's specific to classes that you took that speak to that specific skill set. And so right here, what is a competitive GPA? This is just me going back to see what is in the chat. I would say for purposes of an employer, which is very different from maybe the way we conceptualize GPAs for graduate programs or other things, employers typically have a cutoff at 3.0 if there is any specific reason for them to look at GPA at all. And that doesn't mean that you would never be considered if you have a GPA that isn't at that point. It just means it's probably not something that you want to heavily market or front-facing promote it on your resume. But if it's over a 3.0, I would say it's something that you can consider promoting or including on your resume. If you have any academic honors, awards, any type of merit-based recognition, you can also make that one of these subcategories under your education section. Any questions about our education section before moving forward? Madison?
If you have a thesis, is it bad to hyperlink it or no?
You can hyperlink that as well. I would also make sure that within the link, within the actual text, that it also shows at least enough detail around the title or the topic of that research. So yes, under your education, you can put senior thesis, colon, the name of that topic, the name of that research that it may be. And if you want to hyperlink that, that's okay as well. Again, that kind of follows that same concept of having a link to GitHub or any other profile or LinkedIn. So again, that gives your the reader of your resume, a potential hiring manager, even more context around maybe what you've accomplished, your professional brand, what your areas of expertise have focused on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm reading another question in the chat. Is it better to put honors and awards under education or make it a separate section for honors and awards and put them there? I would say either or is fine. I would say when you tie it to your education section, you can make it, you know, further up on your resume, since education is the preferred first section on a college student's resume, then you can just tie it right to your education so that earlier on in your resume readers process, they'll come across those academic merits that you want to share with them. But either way is fine. So if you want to have a separate section later on, maybe after your experience or other sections, then you can also, I would say just not do both. You wouldn't want to have duplicative information on your document. And Madison, is your hand up again, or is that just from before? Didn't want to ignore you.
Madison, this is Madison Ross.
Madison Ross, was that another? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes.
There are two Madisons? Oh, I see. I
Yes,
got confused.
ma'am.
I'm sorry.
No.
Madison Ross, you are next.
Okay, I was going to ask on the topic of high school information being mostly discluded from this resume, does that probably disclude like high school scholarships to college?
I would say that's a little different. So you may not necessarily need to outline, you know, the name of your high school and that information, the year that you graduated. But if there's some merit-based scholarships that you were acknowledged for that have now supported your UNC education, as long as it's merit-based, then yes, you can put that under like honors or recognition. Good point.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to take a second just to scroll down the list to see if there's anyone else that may have their hand up that didn't come forward. Okay, and let me look in the chat. I think I just saw something pop up in the chat. Would it be better for a PhD student without any prior work experience to have the education section as the first section as well? Great question. And yes, if you haven't had any or much work experience, then you really want to promote where your merits lie and what your brand is really anchored in the moment. And that may be your student status. So regardless if we're talking about an undergraduate, a graduate, or professional school student, I would say if you're currently enrolled in a program, then yes, you'd want to have that education first. And or if you have limited professional experience post-undergraduate, that I would say keep that education section of your resume pretty prominent at the top of your resume. Once you have maybe a couple of years experience out of undergrad, or if you have experience, or if you don't have experience at the PhD level outside of classroom, then you can keep that first. And then once you start to have a few years under your belt, then you can have your experience section or sections. And then maybe after that, then you would highlight your education. Let's see, I see a few things coming into the chat, so I'm going to make sure that I'm not ignoring any of them. So 1 second, let me make sure that how do you recommend presenting grades when you are only given pass, high pass, or include at all? So you won't need to highlight any grades on your resume. You know, most employers, right when they're getting to the point of submitting an offer, a job offer to you, part of that process may mean verifying your transcripts, meaning, you know, have you worked towards a degree completion or have you completed your degree? They may ask for your transcripts, which will highlight your grades, your GPA, what courses were passed, fail, or anything like that. So that information really doesn't have a place on your resume. Okay, let me just go backwards. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. All right. Should we have an objective line on our resume? So you could possibly. So I think when I was speaking about kind of the anatomy of a resume, after your contact information, you could have maybe some kind of professional statement of purpose. I actually really prefer the term summary on your resume, because an objective really just speaks to, I want this job. This is what I'm going towards. And by way of you applying to that position really communicates what you're seeking. So instead of using an objective line on your resume to communicate what you're seeking, I would use a couple lines, really just one or two, to communicate your professional brand. Computer science student with a background in, or state something about what you're studying, where your strengths lie, and how that may align with the type of work that you're going towards. Your hiring manager, they're going to be very much impressed and attracted to individuals who have self-awareness. They can communicate their brand and do so using language that's really aligned with the industry, your function, and what that means towards the position that you're applying to. All right, let's move forward with talking about skills. And so here with the yellow arrow allows that opportunity. And I really appreciate Lakshita, who spoke about, understanding the difference between soft skills and hard skills. The skills section on your resume allows you the opportunity to really speak the language that's essential to your field. So hard skills, things that are very functionally based, things that will set you apart from the next individual. The best way for you to really be able to create a resume that has effective language is by looking at that job description, knowing how it uses language inside and out, what that hiring manager emphasizes in that job description as essential, even things that are recommended but not required, that may emphasize certain use and understanding of software and technology or anything of its type. You would make sure to highlight if you have that in your skills section. And so when we say skills, hard skills means things like programming language, operating systems, databases, as well as other languages that you speak. And so if you have a foreign language at a conversational up through fluent or native speaker, you would want to highlight that on your resume, because depending on your client base, depending on who the colleagues are, the population that may be served within that organization, you having that cultural and or language fluency is an added bonus and could be an asset to the organization. Now, where soft skills come into place is what we're going to speak about in a couple of minutes with projects and relevant experience and additional experience, because in the bullet points is where you're going to be able to elaborate on what you've done, how you've done it, why that had a great impact, and based in that are going to truly emphasize communication skills. Both, they will still speak to your projects and your hard skill knowledge, but behind that accomplishment will also be able to show leadership, analysis, critical thinking, and some of those other soft skills that we also agreed that were of great importance. In the chat, in reference to, and it just popped up as another one came in reference to listing your majors, what if one of your majors is a BS and the other is a BA? So whatever your primary major is what you're getting a degree in. So if your primary major is a Bachelor of Science, then you are getting a Bachelor of Science. Even if your second major would technically be a Bachelor of Arts, you would not be conferred a Bachelor of Arts degree.
Thank you.
Thanks. I see someone else is saying, I put languages under additional experience. is it better to put them under skills or leave them where they are? Well, I would say it's a skill if you're not expanding on the context. So if languages is going under additional experience, that means that it was actually a position or a project that you did, and who did you work for, and then you would have bullet point accomplishment statements that would outline the specifics of that role, and then behind that would maybe outline your language abilities. But if you're just highlighting that you have a hard skill in conversational Spanish, then you would just put that under your skills section. Let me make sure that I'm not forgetting anything. All right. My apologies. Sometimes it's hard to monitor the chat as multiple things come in at the same time. But is there anyone else that, or additional information is where you put your experience? I would say either way is fine. I would say you would possibly want to put, language skills, because that's very marketable. That's something, having intercultural fluency, language knowledge is something that is highly valued by employers of all types. I would say an additional information section is pretty much the last thing on your resume. And again, thinking about the order of importance, if that's something you would like them to see and highlight earlier on in your resume, you may want to put it under skills. Any other questions before we go on to projects? All right, so projects could be work that could be based in the classroom, but projects also could be work that maybe you've done as a freelance coder or freelance expert in other areas. It could be what you have put on your profile as just example experimental work that you've completed in order to highlight certain sections. So what I'm going to do is really include and speak to projects and really all of experience, at one time. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because the concept of how you would organize these sections pretty similar. Your resume also gives you an opportunity to be very strategic with how you want to order information. When we speak about a chronological resume, what we really should be saying is reverse chronological resume, because within sections, you always want to present your most recent experience and then a history of, so that regardless, your reader within the moment, within that category, is reading what you're doing at present, or at least what was the last experience you had. But within sections, you have an opportunity now to really think about how you want to label different types of experiences. It provides you with also an opportunity to really grab that reader's attention and make sure that you present your work in a way that makes sense for the brand that you want to highlight. So for this example, this person thought that it would be important for them to highlight specific projects that they've done first that really identify their coding abilities and things of that nature. But after that, they have a relevant experience section, which then again goes to maybe things that they feel are most poignant or relevant to their career path at hand or the type of position they are currently applying for. And then work that they've done that maybe is less relevant to their overall brand, but still shows maybe some of those soft skills, those transferable skills that still shows that they're flexible and nimble enough to be put in different work environments. At this point, I will take some time to deconstruct what really should be in any one bullet point. I always tell resume writers that there are 3 ingredients that should go into any one bullet point, and we call those points accomplishment statements. They're accomplishment statements because they're more than just a task. This is more than just telling the reader, I did this, I did that within in any given role. This would be really your highlight reel. And within one bullet point, you want to start with a strong verb in the past tense for uniformity throughout your resume, that you're speaking in a common tense with the work that you're speaking of. But you don't want to stop there with using that verb just to say the what of what you've done. You can expand then within that bullet point line to state, how did you do it? What was the scope? What was the impact? And what was the result of that work? And in doing that, you will make sure that your reader understands what you were able to contribute to. Why was that important? What skill set lies behind you doing that work? And then where you can quantify what was the outcome. There's more to come on that, but I do want to refer back to the chat and read another question that's come in. I worked for a couple years between my 2 master's degrees. Should I put my work experience in project or just add work? The work experience does not relate to current master degree, or, so you know what, I would think of this as a great thing. Think about at least first prioritizing both work as well as projects that you've done that is most relevant to your audience. So if you've done work maybe in between that isn't as relevant and maybe will make your resume too lengthy, then that's maybe where you can shorten that. And so it's not that outside work that's outside of the scope of your career path is so irrelevant that you wouldn't want to speak to it. But what it means is that you wouldn't want to ever put that as more of a priority over things that are going to be the biggest value add to your reader. So both recent and relevant. And if relevant trumps recent, then you can take out some of that recent work if it's not as much of in alignment with your own career path.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I hope that was helpful. Thanks. And then what is career readiness? So this is just taking a moment just to go back and do a nod at those soft skills, because it's going to be a fine balance for you to think about both these very specific functional technical skills that you have within your majors and career aspirations of choice as it relates to data science and analytics. But employers are still focused on identifying ways in which you can highlight your self-development, strong communication skills, critical thinking, understand diversity and inclusion, your leadership, which doesn't always have everything to do with the title, your professionalism, which just means how do you show up and engage with others and engage with your work. Same thing with teamwork. How do you work well with others? Also, independent work is also something that you want to be able to show your successes that way. And obviously, just by way of your training and your excitement for the field that we're referring to today, throughout your resume, you are highlighting your technical know-how. So the National Association of Colleges and Employers is the professional association that drives the profession of career services. And so our professional organization a handful of years ago surveyed employers to ask what are the top skills that employers are looking for in recent college graduates. And these are the competencies that bubble to the surface. So it's really our responsibility to make sure to impart these concepts onto you as much as thinking about your functional and technical skill sets. And those bullet points that we just spoke about will be a great balance of you speaking to both those functions that you know how to carry out through previous work, meaning your technical know-how as it relates to data analytics, but also verbiage that speaks to how you've engaged with others as part of a team to have successes in those areas, and just using that as an example. So as we speak about and really think about the value of those bullet point accomplishment statements, think both scope and impact, measuring outcomes. So again, just to repeat, use that strong, concise verbiage. Tell the reader, how did you do what you've done? What was the significance? What was the scope? That can be something that's quantified. And then what was the result? While sometimes it can be qualified, this is also an opportunity, especially by way of the type of work that you have, and many of you have in your experience already. You can absolutely quantify your impact, your outcome, and the value of your contributions. So a few examples of that is just an excerpt from that same resume example of solid resumes. Quantifying, added more than 250 lines of XML code to what? For what purpose, right? Collaborated on a team of how many individuals from how many schools to create what? To increase what? So again, think about not only specific tasks, I did this, but question, what was the importance? How did you use your functional knowledge to do it? How does that also highlight those soft skills? And then what was the end result of your impact? As employers read those types of bullet points, they now have enough substance, enough context to determine your know-how in relation to the position at hand. And then that 6-second skim becomes more of an investment in wanting to learn more about you, because it is that resume that doesn't get you the job, but it could potentially get you the interview in which you can then land the job of your choice. I'll shift gears slightly from the tactical pieces of resume writing to expand a bit more about ways you can now individualize your process, use our resources to supplement some of that decision-making, and then come full circle by engaging with myself or my team even more. If you haven't already done so, please make sure that you visit careers.unc.edu, which is our University Career Services website. And when you go on there, you'll see at the top a link to resources. Under resources, you're going to find an abundance of information on job searching, upcoming events, and things of that nature. But I also wanted to make sure that you are aware that this is where you go to schedule appointments with myself or a member of my team. So when you can do that and log on to Handshake, you don't have to create a new profile. If it'll be your first time logging into Handshake, still do so with your onion and password, because you already have a profile on the site by way of being a matriculating student. So you click on the Career Center and then Appointments. Hit the blue button for New Appointment, and there will be 2 specific options for engaging with our main career office, which is University Career Services, and that is in person or virtually. So you would click either or, and then it'll take you to different appointment types, whether that's going to be a resume and cover letter appointment type, whether or not it's going to be 30 minutes or 60-minute career coaching, mock interview, LinkedIn, or much more. You'll have the ability to identify what you would like your topic or your focus of that appointment to be. I mentioned the importance of understanding industry trends that have everything to do with the function that you're looking to play in a company or organization. So there's a few ways that you can go to get this information. Number one, the Career Readiness Workbook that you'll be able to find on our resources page will truly help you to think about your professional brand as a whole. And starting on page 22, will give more context that will parallel some of the things that I spoke about today around resume writing. Vault, which is a career platform in which we subscribe to, is onion and password protected for you to access to find industry guides related to any company, organization, or industry that you could think of. There's thousands of industry guides housed in Vault. We also have top internships, top data analytics, career fields, and companies for you to be able to explore and do research on straight through Vault Career Guide. You can also find resume templates and examples based on industry as well to, again, help you to really conceptualize your presentation of your own resume document. So at this point, everyone knows that the date of honor is September 15th from 1 to 5 p.m., the Data Science and Analytics Career Fair. It's 14 days away. Right now, there are 42 employers registered, at least based on this morning. It was 42 employers registered. I would encourage you as a student to register in advance so that you can get prompts and reminders, as well as information on how to access Handshake on the day of the event, to navigate this virtual event, to engage with specific employers, to know how you can maybe get specialized time for a one-on-one, and know when to enter into certain rooms to hear organization presentations. So if you have yet to register for this event, I would encourage you to do so right away. It will definitely be in your best interest to make sure to get those prompts ahead of time. In addition to that September 15th career fair, when you go on our website under news and events, you will find other upcoming events that will prepare you for the day in question, as well as going in Handshake directly. You'll be able to see further descriptions and registration information. For example, we have a series of dates for career fair cram sessions, September 2nd, 7th, and 13th. They are all from the 4 to 5 o'clock hour. What is Diversity is another event that we'll be having on September 13th. That actually should say 10:30 to 11:30. And this will be with employers that will talk about the values from a diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective within organizations. And then next week, this same time, we'll expand on this conversation, taking it from resume writing to interviewing. And so I'll be hosting a panel with the organizations you see in front of you, Advance Auto, Red Ventures, Prometheus Group, just to name a few, that will answer questions around interview preparation and how to best put your foot forward when you're engaging with employers after they've sourced your resume and then they've called you for an interview, which is very exciting. We only have maybe a couple of minutes left, but if there's anyone else that has any final questions, I would love to stay on the line and answer any of those. Wanted to remind you again of my contact information, stephanie.mcintyre@unc.edu. If you'd like to follow up with me specifically, or again, use Handshake to schedule that appointment with me or a member of my coaching staff. And this recording today will be on our YouTube channel. So please you are welcome to go once that is uploaded within the next couple of days to refer to our content today and to share it with others. Any final questions, comments, or anything?